It's playoff time in the Blue Collar Football League, and we'll take you through the first two rounds of the postseason, starting in the East, where the Columbus Gladiators hosted the Port City Spartans. The game was a rematch of last year's Eastern Conference Championship game when the Gladiators ended the Spartans' undefeated season 20-0 in Portsmouth. This year, the Gladiators get the host on a stormy night in central Ohio. Columbus already had one first down on the opening drive when Michael Haynes burst through a hole on the right side and worked his way ahead 22 yards into Spartans territory. A penalty helped move the Gladiators up even further, but facing a 4th and 9, Ben Kershaw rolled out. He found James Fields for 11 yards in a first down. But after the next snap, the storm rolled back in, the skies opened up, and less than 6 minutes into the game, play was delayed for nearly an hour. When play finally resumed, the Gladiators looked to continue their drive, but Kershaw couldn't find anyone, kept going backwards, and was finally pulled down by Wendley Belliard for a 23-yard loss. Columbus had the punt, but Joey Reinhardt did make the most of it as he pinned the Spartans down at their own 2-yard line. Somehow, the Gladiators managed to push the Spartans backwards, and when they had the punt, the snap went through the end zone for a safety, and the Gladiators were ahead 2-0. On the first play after the free kick, the Gladiators again turned to Haynes. He shook one man, burst down the right side, and was finally brought down at the 3-yard line. 2 plays later, Haynes finished things off by pushing his way into the end zone from 3 yards out, and by the end of the first quarter, the Gladiators had an 8-0 lead. Things didn't start much better for the Spartans in the second quarter. Duke Edwards' pass was picked off at midfield, and the Gladiators were able to return it 40 yards all the way inside the 10-yard line. 2 plays later, Kershaw flipped the pass to Mikey Love for a 10-yard touchdown, and with the 2-point conversion, Columbus was ahead 16-0 with just under 9 minutes left in the first half. That's when Port City switched things up and went to the power running game. First, Deshaun Locke followed his blockers for 14 yards to the 45. Later, Locke picked up 12 yards down to the 33-yard line. And when the Spartans faced a 3rd and 14, quarterback Noah Corbett scrambled and found his way for 14 yards and another first down. But on 4th and 2, the first pass of the 11-play drive fell incomplete, and the Gladiators took over on downs with a minute remaining in the half. Columbus looked to kneel out the clock, but they fumbled the snap, and Wendley Belliard recovered for the Spartans, giving them the ball back with 12 seconds left in the half. Port City went back to the ground running a sweep, but Deshaun Locke's forward progress was stopped before he got out of bounds. The clock kept running and time ran out on the half, with the Gladiators still ahead 16-0. Port City got the ball to open up the second half, and they opened things back up, first with Corbett finding his receiver for a 45-yard pass inside the 10-yard line. And on the next snap, Corbett connected with a shorter pass, but his receiver was able to make it into the end zone for the touchdown, cutting the lead to 16-6. On the kickoff that followed, James Fields took the kick on a bounce. He wasted no time finding a seam through the Port City defense, and he made it all the way to the 1-yard line to be marked out, but it was still 1st and goal for Columbus. On the next play, Ben Kershaw faked the handoff. He rolled into the end zone for the touchdown, and after 2 touchdowns in the first 2 minutes of the half, it was 22-6 Gladiators. Following the Gladiators kickoff, the Thunder and Lightning rolled back in. And play was stopped for the night, with the Gladiators ahead 22-6, 13:08 left in the third quarter. The two teams had to come back a week later to finish things out, and fortunately, the skies were much clearer this week. Port City couldn't take advantage of their first possession after play resumed, but they got another chance when Larry West picked off this pass and brought it back in to Columbus territory. The Spartans had to punt, but their defense gave them another opportunity when Dion McKinley forced a fumble and John Adams was there to recover at the 7-yard line. On second down, Corbett kept it himself, tried to get it in the end zone, but just before the goal line the ball popped loose. James Fields was there to recover for the Gladiators. Columbus managed a couple of first downs and then turned some trickery, but James Fields was quickly surrounded and fumbled it. John Adams recovered the third turnover of the third quarter for Columbus. The Spartans finally took advantage in the fourth quarter. On 4th and goal, Corbett stepped up. He found Chance Freeman in the end zone for a 14-yard touchdown. The 2-point conversion failed, and with just under 13 minutes remaining in the game, it was 22-12. Once again, Columbus quickly answered. On the first play of their next drive, Kershaw threw up a pass, and Mikey Love came down with it for a 40-yard pickup. On the second play, Kershaw rolled out. He found Travis Birdsong, good for a 15-yard pickup. And then Haynes took a handoff, bounced outside, and found his way in for a 5-yard touchdown. With the 2-point conversion in just 3 plays, Columbus's lead was back up to 30-12. Port City was able to get on the board one more time. Corbett fired deep and hit Larry West. He wasn't touched. He got back up and finished off the 68-yard touchdown that made it 30-18 with 5:38 left in the game. The Gladiators looked to Haynes to try to run out the remaining time. First, he took a pitch around the right side for 12 yards. Then, after penalties pushed him back, he once again worked the right side, this time picking up 19 yards before finally being brought down. Port City did manage to get the ball back for one last possession, but Carlante Higgins ended that with a sack, and the Gladiators were able to kneel out the remaining time for the 30-18 victory. The Gladiators ended the Spartan season for the second year in a row, even though Port City outgained Columbus 240 yards to 163. The Spartans were held to just one touchdown on their 6 drives that started in Columbus territory. For the Gladiators, Michael Haynes led the way with 17 carries for 104 yards and 2 touchdowns. Ben Kershaw completed 8 of 14 passes for 94 yards and a touchdown, while Mikey Love had 3 catches for 63 yards and a touchdown. On defense, James Fields led the team with 6 tackles, including a forced fumble and a fumble recovery. He also had the 79-yard kick return. Dominic Farrell had 5 tackles and a fumble recovery, and Carlante Higgins had 4 tackles, including 2 sacks. For the Spartans, Deshaun Locke was the leading rusher with 30 yards, while Noah Corbett completed 12 of 27 passes for 193 yards and 3 touchdowns. Jalen King was the only receiver with more than 1 catch. He had 6 for 23 yards. Larry West made the most of his catch. It was a 68-yard touchdown. He also had an interception and 3 tackles on defense. Vincent Kennedy led the Spartans defense with 10 tackles, while Dion McKinley had 8 tackles, including 5 for loss. Wenley Belliard had 7, including a sack and a fumble recovery, and John Adams had 7 tackles, 3 for loss, a forced fumble, and 2 fumble recoveries. While the higher-seeded Gladiators won their game in the East, defeating the Spartans 30-18, the West was full of upsets. The Buccaneers went on the road to beat the number 2 seed Cutters 20-4, their second win over Indiana in as many weeks. Meanwhile, the number 4 seed Tornadoes built a big lead and then held on to defeat the top-seeded Blaze 36-26. And that sets up the 2 conference championship games. In the West, the Tornadoes traveled to face the Buccaneers on August 27th. Meanwhile, with the Gladiators game getting postponed a week and the Labor Day holiday, Columbus wasn't able to face the Dukes until September 10th. So while the Gladiators were finishing off their win against the Spartans in the first round, the Bucs and Tornadoes met in the Western Conference Finals. The two teams split their regular season meetings, with the Bucs winning a defensive struggle 7-2 on June 11th, and the Tornadoes defeating the Bucs in Indiana 26-12 on July 16th. That matchup represented the last time the Bucs had lost. After a scoreless first quarter, the Tornadoes struck on the first play of the second quarter. Dominic Rodgers went deep and found Rodney Sutton. He was going to make it all the way for a 74-yard touchdown in a 6-0 Tornadoes lead. Indiana got the ball back, but on second down, Corey Bridges burst through the Bucs defense for 21 yards out to the 34-yard line. But Indiana eventually punted, and Sin City turned to its ground game. First, Greg Johnson found a hole on the left side for 10 yards just before the 2-minute warning. After a loss on the next play, C.J. Talley dropped back to pass, had time but couldn't find anyone. He went backwards, eluded the sack, finally started to make his way upfield. He made one man miss. There's another one. He's worked his way across the field. He's finally going to be forced out after a 40-yard pickup down to the Tornadoes' 27-yard line. On 3rd and 4, Talley's unable to escape Derek Motley, who brings him down for a sack, bringing up 4th and 13. That's when Talley drops back again. This time he's going to let a pass go for Dante Jackson, who's going to be stopped just short of the first down, taking us to halftime with the Tornadoes up 6-0. Sin City is unable to do anything with the opening drive of the second half. But on the Tornadoes' third play, the snap goes by Rodgers, and Joshua Dobbins is able to track it down for the Buccaneers. Facing a third down, Dante Jackson bounces outside and picks up the 5 yards needed for a first down. Later, on the 3rd and 4, Talley keeps himself, he picks up 7 yards down to the 11. Then, on 3rd and 3, Greg Johnson is stopped short at the 2-yard line, bringing up a 4th and 1. Talley keeps it himself, can't quite get in the end zone, but does get the yard necessary to bring up a 1st and goal. And finally, the Bucs are able to cap the 34-yard, 11-play drive as Talley finds his way in along the left side. The extra point puts them up 7-6 with 1:21 left in the third quarter. After the Tornadoes punt, Talley scrambles for a bit before finally connecting with Deion Johnson. He moves upfield and picks up 36 yards down to the Tornadoes' 35-yard line. On the next play, Greg Johnson takes it left for 18 yards down to the 17. And 2 plays after that, it's Johnson around the right side. He makes his way in for a 16-yard touchdown. The extra point is no good, but the Bucs lead 13-6 with 10:34 remaining in the game. Sin City gets the ball back, and this time it's Dante Jackson going up the middle and picking up 15 yards into Tornadoes territory. But on 4th and 2, Greg Johnson is stopped short, and the Tornadoes get the ball back with just under 2 minutes remaining in the game, down by 7. On the first play of the drive, Rodgers drops back, he goes deep, and Rodney Sutton makes a leaping catch. He's not touched, gets back up, gets into the end zone, but there are 2 flags thrown on the play for an illegal block. The touchdown doesn't count, but the Tornadoes will still have the ball at the Bucs' 35-yard line. After a 5-yard run on first down, Rodgers drops back and finds Marcus Richardson for 7 yards, set up a 1st and 10 at the 23. Following an incomplete pass on first down. This time Rodgers scrambles. He's going to step out just short of the first down, however. That brings up 3rd and 1. And this time Joshua Dobbins is there to bring down Rodgers, setting up a 4th and 4 at the 17. Then Rodgers drops back, scrambles a bit, still looking for somebody. Finally lets it go and is picked off by Jaquan Jackson. He slips a tackle and takes off downfield. He's going to make it 50 yards into Tornadoes territory, and the Buccaneers can start celebrating. All they need to do is kneel down one time, and they will be back in the BCFL championship game. The Buccaneers claimed the win by scoring all 13 points that were scored in the second half. They also held the Tornadoes to 0 for 7 on third down and 0 for 2 on fourth down. For Indiana, Corey Bridges carried 9 times for 37 yards, while Dom Rogers completed 4 of 14 passes for 128 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for 10 yards. Ronnie Sutton had 2 catches for 115 yards, 1 for a touchdown, and 1 that would have been a touchdown if it weren't called back. Angel Russell led the defense with 8 tackles, while Derek Motley had 3 tackles, including 2 sacks. For Sin City, CJ Talley threw for 63 yards and ran for 63 yards, scoring a touchdown on the ground. Dante Jackson had 2 catches for 24 yards and 11 carries for 49 yards. Greg Johnson also had 49 yards, doing it on 10 carries, and Johnson also had a touchdown run. Daniel Ferguson led the team with 5 tackles, while Joshua Dobbins had 3 tackles, 2 for loss, 1 sack, and a fumble recovery. Last year, the Bucs advanced to the championship game as the number 2 seed in the West. This year, they will make it as the number 3 seed. The Buccaneers finally found out who their opponent would be 2 weeks later when the Cincinnati Dukes hosted the Columbus Gladiators. The Dukes lost in this round last year to the Buccaneers, while the Glads were looking to make it a championship rematch against the Buccaneers. The Dukes and the Gladiators did play all the way back in Week 1 on May 14th, with Columbus coming away with a 28-24 win in Cincinnati. The Dukes punted on the opening possession of the game, and on the Gladiators' second play, Ben Kershaw went deep, Mikey Love ran under it, and made his way in for a 72-yard touchdown. And just over 5 minutes into the game, the Gladiators led 6-0. On the kick that followed, Darian Brown fielded the ball just in front of the 20. He made it to midfield, sidestepped a couple tackles, and made his way all the way 62 yards down to the 17 before finally stepping out of bounds. But on 4th and 3, Kamani Murray pass to takeaway was knocked away by Clive Wofford, and the Dukes had turned it over on downs. Kershaw again looked to Love, who managed to hold on despite the hit by Kayvon Burnett for a 16-yard pickup. The Dukes defense held from there, and Joey Reinhardt was forced to punt for the Gladiators. Justin Cornwall was driven back to about the 20-yard line where he fielded it. He worked his way along the right sideline and picked up 40 yards, setting the Dukes up at the Gladiators' 39-yard line. On second down, Murray had time and found Cornwall for 15 yards and a first down. On the next play, Brent Robinson burst through the left side of the Gladiators defense for 17 yards down to the 10-yard line. But on 4th and goal from the 2, Dominic Williams was tripped up by Jeremy Williams for a 6-yard loss, and the Gladiators defense held once again. The Dukes defense pushed Columbus back from there, and when the Gladiators had the punt from the 2-yard line, Sean Sullivan came up the middle. He blocked the punt. It landed out of bounds, resulting in a safety for the Dukes, cutting the Gladiators' lead to 6-2 with 10:40 left in the half. On the second play after the free kick, Murray pump faked, then he went deep. Tay White hauled it in for a 33-yard touchdown. The 2-point conversion was no good, but the Dukes led 8-6 with 9:20 left in the second quarter. On Columbus' next play from scrimmage, Kershaw faked the handoff, went deep, and Love came down with it for a 30-yard pickup down to the Dukes' 37-yard line. On the next snap, Kershaw went deep again, but this time Burnett was there to pick it off inside the 10-yard line, and he brought it back out to about midfield. The Gladiators got the ball back on a punt. And just after the 2-minute warning, Kershaw rolled out to his left, fired, but he was picked off by Leandre Pope at the Duke's 46-yard line. On the Duke's first play, Murray fired over the middle, and somehow Darian Brown came down with it for a 31-yard gain to the Gladiators' 23-yard line. On the next play, Murray connected with Cornwall. For 19 yards, he was finally dragged down inside the 5-yard line. And after one run was stuffed, Tay White lined up at quarterback. He sprinted for the corner end zone and got in for the touchdown with 26.3 seconds left in the half. The 2-point conversion was no good, but the Dukes led 14-6 at halftime. The Gladiators punted on the opening drive of the second half, and the Dukes lined up to do the same, but Lamar Taborn handled a low snap, flipped a pass that was caught by Patrick Porterfield for an apparent first down. But Porterfield was lined up as a lineman on the play, making it illegal touching, a penalty that includes a loss of down, giving the ball to the Gladiators at the Dukes' 40-yard line. Columbus faced a 4th and 5 when Kershaw found Lee Saunders over the middle for 9 yards and a first down. Then, facing a 3rd and 10, Kershaw dropped back, saw some room along the left side, and ran for 16 yards and another first down at the 10-yard line. And on 2nd and goal, again it was Kershaw to Saunders for a 6-yard touchdown with 4:23 left in the third quarter. Columbus went for 2 to tie the score. Travis Birdsong lined up under center, and he got plenty of help getting pushed across the line for the 2-point conversion that tied things up 14-14. On Cincinnati's first play, Brent Robinson found a hole and worked his way ahead 17 yards into Gladiators territory. But on 4th down, Murray's pass was just out of the reach of Tay White, resulting in a turnover on downs. On Columbus' second play, the snap was low, Kershaw couldn't handle it, it squirted away and was finally recovered by Sean Sullivan at the Gladiators 28 with 13 seconds left in the third quarter. Cincinnati couldn't take advantage, however. In the fourth quarter on 4th and 11, Murray connected with Cornwall, but Jeremy Williams was there to meet him for no gain in a turnover on downs. After 3 incomplete passes and a punt by the Gladiators, Murray found Darian Brown for 12 yards out to the 45. On the next play, it was Murray to Cornwall for 16 yards down to the Gladiators' 39-yard line. Penalties helped the Dukes move down to the 15-yard line, but on 4th and 14, Murray looked for Brown. The pass was too long. Yet another turnover on downs by the Dukes, with 6 minutes and 31 seconds left in the game. Columbus picked up 1 first down, but then the clock struck 10, meaning lights out. It took about 20 minutes, but the lights did come back on, and we were able to determine a winner of the Eastern Conference. When play resumed, the Gladiators were pushed backwards, but Joey Reinhardt was able to boom a 57-yard punt that rolled and was downed at the Dukes' 12-yard line with 2 minutes and 40 seconds left in the fourth quarter. A false start moved the Dukes back to their own 7-yard line, but on the first play, Brent Robinson was able to get those 5 yards back, fighting his way out to the 12-yard line. On 2nd down, Robinson got even more. He burst up the middle. He was met, but started carrying Gladiators with him for another 10 yards for a 29-yard gain out to the Dukes' 41-yard line at the 2-minute warning. On the next play, Murray faked to Robinson, kept it himself, and he gained 7 yards out to the Dukes' 48-yard line. Then it was back to Robinson, but he was tripped up in the backfield by Justin Walker for a 3-yard loss, setting up a 3rd and 6. That's when Murray lofted a pass. Cornwall ran under it, made one cut inside. There was nobody there to stop him. He made it all the way 55 yards for the touchdown with 14.1 seconds left in the game. With the 2-point conversion added by Tay White, the Dukes led 22-14. Columbus had time for one last desperation play. The snap was to Birdsong. He lateraled to Kershaw. He took his time, but his pass fell incomplete, and that ended the game. The Dukes came away with the 22-14 win, and they could start celebrating their Eastern Conference Championship in a trip to the BCFL Championship game. The Dukes pulled out the win despite going 0 for 5 on 4th down. The Gladiators were 1 for 1. Cincinnati did win the turnover battle, coming away with 3 turnovers while not giving up the ball themselves. For Columbus, Kershaw was 6 of 22 passing for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. Mikey Love was the leading receiver with 3 catches for 126 yards and a touchdown. Michael Haynes was the leading rusher despite being held to 16 yards on 12 carries. Jeremy Williams had 8 tackles to lead the defense, while Carlonte Higgins had 4 tackles and 2 sacks for the second straight postseason game. For the Dukes, Murray was 19 of 28 passing for 255 yards and 2 touchdowns. All 3 of their top receivers also made big contributions. Justin Cornwall caught 11 passes for 157 yards and a touchdown. He also had the 40-yard punt return. Darion Brown had 4 catches for 58 yards. He also had 4 kick returns for 117 yards. And Tay White had 3 catches for 46 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. Sean Sullivan led the defense with 7 tackles, 1 fumble recovery, and a block punt that resulted in a safety. Howard Tidwell followed with 6 tackles, while Kayvon Burnett and Leandre Pope came away with interceptions, helping the Dukes reach their first BCFL championship game. Looking once again at how we got here, the Gladiators knocked off the Spartans in a 2-week affair in the first round in the East. The Dukes waited before finally defeating the Gladiators in the Eastern Conference Finals, earning their first trip to the BCFL championship game. Meanwhile, in the West, the Blaze and the Cutters, the top 2 seeds, were knocked off in the first round. Meanwhile, in the Western Conference Finals, the Buccaneers knocked off the Tornadoes to earn a chance to repeat as BCFL champs. And that sets the stage for the 2022 BCFL championship game between the Sin City Buccaneers and the Cincinnati Dukes on September 17th at Walnut Hills High School in Cincinnati. The Buccaneers did knock the Dukes out of the playoffs last year, 27-12. The only one of the 4 meetings between the teams that has been decided by more than 6 points. That includes their matchup earlier this year on July 30th, when they played to a 6-6 tie. This time, there will be no ties, as the game will determine the BCFL champion.